Charles, I really like today's movie poster because Joe Biden is just an absolute wreck. How are you today from this undisclosed international location?
I am doing very well, thank you. I'm enjoying the sun. I'm maddening people around me because I'm getting tan without using suntan lotion. Although today I have to do it because I'm on a beach and it's pretty bright here. When I can reveal the location, I will explain where I have been, and I just can tease it out that I've traveled to, I think, more than 80 countries. I've been to many beach locations, and many, resort type situations. And this is really fantastic where I am today.
Congratulations. That sounds good. New York still sucks. But Charles, Joe Biden is an absolute wreck, not just wrecking the United States of America. He seems to have virtually destroyed the Democratic Party. It's interesting because, I don't know if you're familiar with Joel Gilbert directly, but he did a
Yeah.
documentary in which he predicted that Michelle Obama would be sort of shoehorned in there at the Democrat convention. That didn't happen, and he was attributing it possibly to Joe's vindictive selfishness in endorsing Kamala Harris on his way out the door. So he really wrecked everything. What do you think? And now we've got RFK Jr. joining with Trump. Seems like a pretty powerful strategic political maneuver to me.
And it's only, I think, the first step. I mean, it's sort of the second step, with Musk being perhaps the first, or Tucker being the first, then Musk, then now Kennedy. If I think back to the beginning of my adult life, when I turned 18 and I was at Yale, I got involved with the Yale Political Union. Parties were relevant. Political parties were relevant. You couldn't gather easily mass groups of people to do anything. So it was useful to have a party apparatus in between elections. Parties mattered inside the Congress and the Senate when you're trying to think through committee appointments and how all that works. But in the age of everyone being connected 24/7, you don't really need these political parties. And then over time, as politics became the biggest business in the world, American politics, that is, if you look at our government spending, the crooks at both sides of both parties figured out that you can make a lot of money. You can start with nothing and become almost a billionaire, as Bill Clinton has done, or you can start with something and increase your fortune, as the Bush family has done. So political parties in general don't matter, and actually, the audience that consumes political news and analysis is a tiny sliver of the people who care about whether or not Taylor Swift is wearing a bra at a concert. I mean, it's just, but we've gotten to a point now where our political apparatus is so stupid and so corrupt and so bold that they've decided, they were able to put a president into the campaign from his basement, concealing material adverse facts, which had they been known by the electorate, it's already been admitted. Joe Biden would not have been able to steal the 2020 election if we'd known the truth about his criminal enterprise going back decades, enriching his family off his, quote, public service. So I think we've been in a period now where things haven't worked. I would attribute the start of this period to Ross Perot. And I remember I had purchased my home in upstate New York on July 2nd, 1987. And there was a nice restaurant called the Country Store, country something or other, that was in the center of this very small town that had less than 1,000 people in it. And by the 91, 92 time frame, I'd been there for 4.5 years. We would constantly go in there on the weekends for dinner, or at least one meal. And there was a guy who was driving through who was an avid Ross Perot supporter. And at the time, I was working still. I just left Dillon Reed, but I remained close to people who were close to Nick Brady and stuff. And the Ross Perot phenomenon was a rejection of country club republicanism and corruption as well in the Democrat Party. And that fight sort of played out in the 2015-16 cycle, but not really. I mean, it would have been much better to have had, in retrospect, contest between Trump and Bernie Sanders. And Trump would have decisively won that contest. But instead of doing that, we had the corrupt Clinton. And then we had the team after Clinton that has relentlessly pursued Trump because he's a threat to the what I call stupidism, which is globalism. I mean, the globalist structure just doesn't work. It's not as if we have 200 nations that are roughly equal in size. We have the United States, we have the Japanese private sector economy, we have the Chinese Potemkin economy, and then you start going way down. I mean, the GDP of the United States is 20 trillion now. Germany's is maybe 3, call it 4. You know, when you get down to France and England at 2, and a lot of these countries are yakking about globalism and feasting off of it, whether it's Norway, the other Scandinavian countries. These are tiny countries whose populations don't really consume much of the global output. Yet, if by playing along and giving Nobel Prizes out to the people who support globalism, a country like Norway remains more than relevant, punching well above its weight. And meanwhile, the media, we see the degree to which influence shapers, starting with academia, and you take that idiot Buttigieg or that idiot Rachel Maddow or that idiot Bill Clinton, and you give them a Rhodes scholarship, courtesy of the corrupt people in the UK, and you take an idiot from wherever Maddow was, and Buttigieg from Indiana, and Bill Clinton from Arkansas, and you catapult them into an arc where they can become presidents of the United States or worse. So that is all corrupt. Mainstream academia, we know, is corrupt. I got an email. Harvard is very good at dealing with its extended alumni and sends out these mass emails about most issues that are affecting the campus. There's been a lot about Cloudy and Gay. So she gets bounced as president. The provost, who's really, and it's Provost, but I think it's pronounced provost, is the person who actually runs the university. The president is the one who's flying around the world glad-handing and asking for contributions to the endowment, typically. But we find out that the president of Harvard is a fake, just as worse than Elizabeth Warren. And instead of bouncing her ass out, canceling her, which is something you can do at Harvard, you can expunge them from the records of Harvard. Here's a person who was at Harvard for a long time, who bounced students for plagiarism. She stands revealed as a plagiarist, a serial plagiarist, and instead of punishing her severely, they appoint the provost to be acting president. And I just got an email from him saying he's very grateful that the university has decided to extend his acting presidency until the year that ends in either 26 or 27. And my attitude is that guy, the entire board of trustees, the heads of all the schools, they should all be fired with prejudice. Cloudy and Gay's scholarship, there's no scholarship there. She's a fucking liar and a cheater. But so across academia, you have a bunch of glad-handers. Who knows how many Cloudy and Gays there are scattered? And I'm not picking on her because of her sex or her race. I mean, we know that Governor Walz is a serial liar. We know that Joe Biden is a serial plagiarist. We know that Fareed Zakaria is a serial plagiarist. So across academia, where if Harvard University Press pumps out a book, it automatically is going to sell a bunch of copies. If a Harvard professor gets involved in a business venture, it'll be easier to raise money. Same with Yale, Columbia, and NYU, and many other places. So that whole area of influence shaping is not at all regulated. Mainstream media, people on the left and some on the right used to wait breathlessly for the New York Times to read the editorial and op-ed pages. That thing is a piece of trash, as is the Wall Street Journal, as is the Washington Post, as is Newsweek, as is Time. So, that area is all gone. Of course, cable news and network news, that's gone. And now you're left with Twitter or X and maybe Facebook and Telegram we should talk about. But so the go-to opinions are easily corrupted by the disinformation crowd by the charities, the unregulated charities that get involved with that nonsense. And it's pretty easy, as we see. I mean, somebody, I think, to their credit, has been talking about 4 or 5 weeks ago, the mainstream thinking among the influence shapers was that Kamala Harris had to be replaced because she was the weakest vice president ever with the lowest approval rating ever. Now, all these very same people are singing her praises. This is a person who has not done a press conference, who is not, in Kamala Harris, who has not articulated a single policy position in detail, whose minions are suggesting that we're going to go back to policies that nearly destroyed this country prior to Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, that is, with ruinously high tax rates, with an unconstitutional concept that you're going to tax unrealized capital gains, more wasteful government spending, more debts, more deficits, more wars. And Kamala Harris is like, she goes on RuPaul's drag queen show. I mean, and goes and does other ridiculous interactions, scripted fake phone calls with Barack Obama and his idiot waltz. And the public's falling for it. And worse, the mainstream press is tolerating this. If I were the head of CNN, I would say to the Democrat Party, no airtime for you until you do a serious press conference. None. None of your people. We don't give a shit about your press conferences. You take latrine, let her go shopping, put other idiot in there until Kamala Harris and Joe Biden explain who the fuck is running the United States right now, what they're doing, until Kamala gets up there. And I mean, this is a person without a single vote in a primary. And people are worrying about Donald Trump destroying democracy. They've already destroyed democracy. From the basement campaign, to the lies about January 6th, the lies about the economy. I mean, with all that we're now talking about, if Trump had told his Bureau of Labor Statistics to invent job goals, job results, and then 90 days, 75 days before the election, it was revealed that the pathetically poor record that had been outlined, where all the jobs went to foreigners and most of them were part-time jobs and most of them were replacement jobs pre-COVID. And then on top of that, you have to say, well, 800,000 of those jobs, it was a mistake, fucked up. I mean, Trump would legitimately be bounced out, but instead, Biden's on vacation in Santa Barbara. Airhead is who knows where, pretending that she's a legitimate candidate for president. And the public signing off on it. I mean, in the old days, you would have had somebody like Bill Donaldson, or you name a veteran, Walter Cronkite, or somebody would have been saying, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a presidential contest. We don't know what Kamala Harris stands for. And we don't know. The only thing we know about Waltz is he's a pathetic liar, worse than Biden, about his record.
Charles, what about this?
So
they had some hype saying there was going to be some kind of, famous surprise guest or something. People were speculating Beyonce or Taylor Swift, or I even heard George W. Bush, but it was nobody. So now they're blaming TMZ, but a lot of people think that they said this just to boost ratings and excitement and everything, and that they're just liars. I think that might be true.
Of course they are. And so obviously they believe that they can steal the election and they can silence anybody worse in 2024 than they did after 2020, who dares to say that the election in 2024 was stolen. That's obviously what somebody in the power structure in the Democrat Party believes. But, you don't have to be an expert on crowd sizes or politics to contrast what recently happened in Arizona with what happened the last time Kamala Harris or Joe Biden had a rally in Arizona. I mean, it's not even close. And I think this time, I for one, thought that Trump was going to win decisively in 2020. And so I think a number of people who might have been Trump supporters just didn't bother to vote, which also hurt. This time, that's not happening. Kamala Harris wins in 2024, America's done. It's just done. I mean, the way that she blithely talks about, she thinks she respects the Constitution so much, she's going to take away people's guns with an executive order. Can't do that.
Did she say that?
Yes.
Oh, my God. But Charles, what about this? This seemed like an amazing moment of unity. I mean, there's really not a single other politician who kind of historically represents the Democrat, Kennedy. They even say, oh, I'm a Kennedy Democrat. It's like the name is synonymous with Democrats, and the notion that a Kennedy would endorse a Republican. I'm not saying like, oh, JFK or RFK would roll over. I'm saying I agree with what he did. He's saying, hey, we went to Kamala Harris and said, maybe we can work together. This seems like an incredibly smart political move. And if anything, it brings Trump closer to rationality in that he's willing to meet someone midway who he's previously disagreed with, right?
Well, I mean, people need to study Kennedy and the times. I mean, back when Kennedy was elected president, the highest marginal income tax rate was 90% on earned income. And Kennedy, on his economic and foreign policy major planks, he'd be a conservative Republican today. Back in 1960, there was no Voting Rights Act. It was delayed in part. The adoption of it was delayed because Democrats fought against the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. And anyway, so Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, that is, was a conservative. Ted Kennedy was a booze hound, kook. I mean, if you think about Ted Kennedy, in the election of 1980, he actually had feelers out to the Soviet Union saying, when Reagan wins, don't worry, you can deal with me and I'll restrain Reagan. I mean, imagine if Trump had done that. Ted Kennedy did that as a senator. So and as Steph, I think it's Tammy Bruce had a long tweet. There's a lot of for all the fame and polish that the Kennedy name has today, the scandal list is longer than the Clinton scandal list. How the Kennedys made their money, what happened in the 1960 election. You could go on and on and on with the womanizing of Marilyn Monroe and everything. But in the day, it's now 64 years ago, the John F. Kennedy brand fought for some important precepts. I mean, America was segregated in the election of 1960. And to go and as an idiot, Spartacus, I call him Farticus, Cory Booker, apparently was just on some stupid show with, I think, Jake Tapper, saying that this is now an opportune time to kill the MAGA Republican followers. He's actually said that on television.
Wow. Cory Booker said that?
I'm sorry, that is so far over the line. Particularly given that an attempt was made. We don't really know by who yet, but an attempt was made on the president's life, former president's life. And this Cory Booker was a fool in the election cycle of 2009, 19, and 20. He's a rich guy. His family were IBM executives. He's no ghetto hoodster. He's a Rhodes Scholar as well.
He's a dunce.
But I mean, the guy knows better. And he should be reprimanded. He should be rebuked in the Senate for that comment. I mean, it's the last, and as should Obama for not rebuking him. Right? I mean, you got to dial this rhetoric back. People disagree. If you want to propose socialism to the American public, ruinous high tax rates, gigantic, triple the size of the bureaucracy, have the country run only by idiots. By all means, campaign on that. Let's have a free and fair election, and we'll see who wins. You're not going to win with that program across the heartland. You might win in New York City. You might win in San Francisco. Every place that's a disaster zone or war zone, maybe you'll embrace communism or whatever you want to call it, Kamalunism.
They have it right there.
Kamalunism.
Oh, that's racist.
But well, it's just stupid. And then you look across, look at the people who are at the top levels of Kamala's campaign. They're all black, and many of them are black women. America's 13% black. It's not like we're South Africa, where 15, 20% of the country ran a country that was 85% black and denied opportunities to blacks. That is not the current state of America. And this charlatan, giving him the guy has a television program that nobody watches with an IQ over 5. He doesn't pay his taxes. What he did in Poughkeepsie in the 80s to Stephen Pagonis was just diabolically bad. For that alone, he should be in prison.
What is that?
Tawana Brawley thing. Yeah. And, going around saying he's, quote, a reverend, right? If he's a reverend, I'm a rabbi. Right? He has no religious training. And, he's a snappy dresser, maybe.
Some people are wondering how his head can stay attached because he's looking extremely like from the side, like a twig. Like his head might snap off at any moment. He's had some, that surgery where they like connect your esophagus to your rectum and then you lose a lot of weight. He had that.
I think actually we connected his rectum to his brain or what's left.
Exactly. They worked it in reverse.
The most valuable thing he could do is go lecture, minister to Chris Christie and tell him to, it's time to have a stomach stapled again. That didn't work.
Charles, this is off subject, but a viewer sent me this photo of her dogs watching Crowdsource the Truth. And it's so incredibly adorable, I can't help but discuss it. Because, 4 of them are very attentively watching the show. And this one is smiling like a little person, almost as if, he's delighted to be taking a photo with his brothers and sisters.
What you should do is you should create a new, there's Cat Turd 2. Cat Turd 1 was taken down. Cat Turd 2 is now up and running. Maybe you should do Dog Turd. Have this be the avatar.
Not do that. But I did find out something very interesting about X, Charles. I was looking into Linda Yaccarino's father. I don't want to distract from the Joe Biden wreck, and we still have a lot of details to go into that we will discuss in the First Amendment Forum. We have about 2 minutes left here, and then people who sponsor the show on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and on subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. They're going to be able to join us in the First Amendment Forum. We'll talk some more about Joe Biden and what a wreck he is and all that. But I was looking into Linda Yaccarino's father because she had posted on X in March of this year that he died, unfortunately, and he was the chief of police of Nassau County. I've been looking into the history and some of the things the New York Times has published about it. They seem to have been very involved with the formation of the FBI, JTTF, and of course Nassau County is within the Eastern District of New York. So interaction with the U.S. Attorney's Office during the time the Gambino crime family was being pursued and everything, there seems to be quite a lot of interaction with Judge Caproni, well, before she was a judge. I don't mean to distract, Charles. We still have a lot to discuss about Robert Kennedy. I mean, what do you think about this from a standpoint of how it will impact the election? A lot of people really want to hear your opinion about this.
Well, yeah, I think it was a masterstroke, both in the negotiations that led to the decision, the way in which he was presented to the crowd, the adoring reaction of the crowd. I mean, Robert F. Kennedy is clearly a tragic figure. I mean, there are many people, very few people have to cope with what happened to him and his uncle. And it's not like he didn't know who his uncle was. So he's had a lifetime of privilege, of course, but also pain. And he's had his problems, and hats off to him for being sober. It's the statistics are very, very negative on going from addiction of any kind to sobriety. So to keep it up, to be a good father to many children, and now to make this important contribution in a very dangerous and perilous time for the country and the world, when he himself had people coming into his house trying to get him and his family, and that idiot wreck Biden denied him at first Secret Service protection. So this is a person we should be listening to. And yes, his voice is tough to listen to at times. Yes, some of his positions are kooky. But on the important ones, against the deep state, on tackling the problems that need to be tackling, leaving pushing the United States out of stupidism, out of globalism, bringing private sector, good non-union, not union, but non-union private sector jobs back into this country as opposed to other countries, taking down the odious deep state. These are important, big issues with which he does agree with Trump. And I think it's nice to see what was most amazing to me was the audience reaction to him in Arizona. It was really heartfelt, warming, and uplifting to see that. So how many other Kennedys are out there? People who've been pretending that Joe Biden is anything other than a stupid piece of shit. I think you're going to see other people come forward. There's an Atlantic piece savaging Kamala Harris by some progressive person, as you should savage her. So, I mean, I think there are going to be more Kennedys, but this was one of the best things that's happened on the political front in decades was this development, in my opinion.
Well, Charles, let's put a pin in this right here. We'll continue the conversation in less than 5 minutes in the First Amendment Forum. Everybody can join us there. Please become a sponsor of the show if you aren't already. And thanks to everybody who's sponsoring on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth. That's the most economical way to access the sponsor-exclusive content and to support the show for as little as $3 a month, plus a 58-cent Odyssey fee. You can support an independent technology platform in Odyssey and an independent journalism platform in Crowdsource the Truth. Thanks also to everybody who's there on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We'll be right back. Stay with us.